Documenting your API is an important step in API building. Once you build an API, front-end developer or any consumer of your API should know about how to use that API, what are the all available routes or endpoints, how to make the requests, and what to expect as a response when someone hits that route or endpoint. Basically, you should provide request and response structure and all other instruction about your API in your API documentation. So here is some example of API documentation. This is the Blogger API by Google. So here we can see instruction about how to retrieve post from blog. This is the endpoint, and this is how we send request structure. This is the response we get after sending request to this endpoint. So it tells more about the API and endpoint. Similarly, how to retrieve post, how to add post, what should be the request, what kind of parameters should we pass while creating form. So here is another example of task API. So here is the endpoint for making request, which will return the list of tasks, and here are the path parameters, optional parameters, and authorization header, and all other information that are required to successfully get data and use the API endpoint. So in this video we are going to document our API that we built in this playlist, or particularly in the third episode of this list, REST API CRUD with Laravel, where we built the task API. You can watch that video if you want, or you can directly download the code if you want to study that. So let me show you it in Postman. So these are the endpoints for getting task. If we send request to this endpoint, API/task, we'll get this kind of response. So this will basically return all the tasks. Similarly, here we got the store endpoint, where we can create the task. There we go. Similarly, delete, update. And to document this API, we'll use a package which will make our task quite easier and quite faster. We can build API rather than just typing all this in HTML. So it will be quite time consuming, right? So yeah, first off, we'll pull in this package. This is the Laravel API Docs generator. So here I have opened up the code in VS Code. So first thing first, we'll pull in the package. So composer require this command from documentation. So to save some time, I have already installed. So once that package is pulled by composer, next step is to generate the config file. If you need to alter some configuration which is required, you can publish this by this command. Okay, so that config file is published in config API doc. So here are all options that you can alter. So we'll talk about these options in a while. So after package is pulled in, you can use this command to generate your API. Alright, so let's go back to terminal again, and let me run this command, php artisan API doc generate. So as you can see, it goes through all the routes, all the endpoints, and it generated some file or some folder. So it is saying it published this on resources docs and public docs. So if you go to public, you'll see new folder called docs. So it contains all the required files to render the documentation page. So let's visit that page, documentation page. So this is our domain where we install this project, and if we go to docs route, we should see our API documentation that is just generated by that package. So if you see, everything is inside this general. Alright, so here you can see, for example, So these are all passport related route. So here is our task related route. So currently we have not much information, we just have the endpoint and we have some basic request and response structure. So next thing what we'll do is we'll organize these. So currently it is not quite intuitive where is what endpoint, so we'll organize these endpoint according to their resource. Like for task management we'll create another navbar menu like general. So right now everything goes in general. You can also configure what we should call, whether to call it general or anything else in your config API doc, that file we just generated. So here you can see default group is general. You can call it anything you want. Okay, so everything you are seeing here is inside public docs, but it keeps regenerating every time. So if you want to edit anything or change anything, there is another folder that is generated by this same package here inside resources docs. If you want to alter anything, you can go to source, you can go to index.md. here you can, for example, welcome to generated API reference, you can call it let's say welcome to our web mathematics API reference. Just save it. So after you save it, if you visit, you won't see any changes, so it is still that. So to make changes after you edit, what you need to do is you need to run php artisan API doc rebuild. So regenerate for if you want to regenerate from start, or if you change any route. So rebuild means if you alter anything in your resources doc, you can rebuild it. It will just rebuild the source code or any HTML or CSS changes. Here we go, web mathematics API reference. So next step is we'll group this task related route in one group. So we'll pull them out from general into task management group. So in order to do that, if you go to documentation, you'll find that information as well here in documenting your API. So grouping endpoint. So in order to group your endpoint in your controller, you just need to put this group and then description of group like so. So let's go to, so let me go to api.php, and here you can see these are the task related endpoints. So we are using API resource which will create get, post, put and delete route. So this is the shortcut for typing up all these. So let's go to task controller. All right, so here on controller, after class starts, so here in controller at the top we can put that, not after the class starts. So here group we can say tasks management and API for managing tasks. You can give any description you want. So just on top you need to put this group task management with this syntax. Alright, so after making changes in controller, let's go back, let's open up terminal. So after making change, we will run not rebuild but regenerate. API doc generate. Alright, so it generated everything. Let's go back to our documentation page and let's refresh. So yeah, here you see another group, task management, and general was by default. So in task management you see all task related routes, so API tasks, newly created tasks, everything like so. All right, So next step is we'll define the each route in detail. So currently if you see, we are just this displaying listing resource over here. We have no idea what parameter to pass, what kind of response it will return. Similarly for creating new tasks, we have no idea what body parameter or what form parameter we need to pass. We need to specify that as well. So let's do that. So first, index view. So listing of tasks. So if you go to the documentation of this package, here in documenting your API, after grouping endpoint, you can see here specifying request parameter. So you can specify those parameters using if that is URL parameter, like that in URL. For example, if our URL got ID or something, like after task/ID, then we need to specify like so. Body parameter for post requests. Similarly, query parameter. So for our index route, we don't have any parameter, so we'll move on to our store route. So inside store, for creating tasks, we need to provide at least these form parameter: title, description, due date. So if you can see, if we go to tasks, create tasks migration table, so we have ID, user ID. So these are all posted by relationship. So we require title, so only title is required. Description is nullable, due date is also nullable. So for task to create, we at least need title. All right, so title is the required parameter, and description and due date are optional parameter. So we need to specify that on our API. So after this, here we can say add body param. Let me make sure if I type this. Yeah. So body parameter will require title. So it will be string, which is required, and we need to pass the description about what it is. So it is the title of the task. So if you want to pass any example, like my first task, so this example will be used by package if it want to fetch any data. So let's go back. So after you make any changes, you need to run generate command, API doc generate. So just two command, API doc generate and API doc rebuild. So you quite often use this generate command. So let's refresh. So in the store new endpoint, you will see this title, which should be string, required, and title of task is the description. All right, so let's go back and add more details to it. So let's duplicate it. So another one is description. So it is the text, it is optional. So this example is just optional. If you don't want to pass it, just don't. So similarly, last one is due date. Sorry, just due, and it is also string. So it can be string of date or anything. So it can be next Friday, it can be date, string. Alright, so once we saved it, we'll run API doc generate command once again. So it will rebuild everything for us. So if we visit documentation, we'll see our other parameter description, which is optional. So we just don't need to pass this optional, we can omit it. So if we do not specify required, it is automatically optional. So we have specified all the required body parameter that need to be passed for this post API endpoint. So we also need to tell that this all endpoint should require the authenticated user to access these routes. So in order to do that, what we can do is, so here we can just do authenticated. Let me confirm if that is the right indicating authenticated response. Yeah, authenticated. So if you do authenticated, regenerate it, refresh, so it says requires authentication. All right, so similarly for get route as well, we should do authenticated. All right, so next step, if you see this response, example response, we are getting 401 because we are not authenticated. So this package is automatically trying to send request and it is returning the 401 response. So in post request we have no response body, response, yeah, here we just have example request, no response. So for all get requests like this API task, this package automatically try to send the request to this endpoint and see what it returns. So currently it is all unauthenticated. So next step is to define this response body. So here for providing example response, we have a couple of options. We can just do like so. So for index route as well, we need to provide the response body. So here is the custom response we provided. Let's generate once again. So there we go. So we can see these example response. So this is ideal for small response. So if you got like this much long response for your index, so there got a lot of objects or like so. So it is not good practice to manually type these, so it will be time consuming. So there is another option. So there is other option as well. If you want to do the document using resource collection or resource model, you can just do API resource collection and then path to the collection, resource collection. So in our case here we have task resource. So what we can do here is, all right, so here API resource collection, we need to provide the path to this task resource. So we can copy it from here. Similarly for resource model, so our resource model is task model. So app task. So once you save it, generate it, refresh, so you can see. So you might be wondering, these got just 3 properties or 3 attributes. Here is a lot of these links meta tag. So this is because when you use like so API collection, what it will do is it will look for factory, any task factory, and it will manually post some data there. This package will do that and it will return that. So if you go to task factory, you will see there are just these 3 attributes, so it will just return 3. So in my opinion, this resource collection is not ideal. So what I recommend, or what is the best practice, is to include the response file. All right, so you can use response file, or you can just dump this response and manually specify there like we do for response. All right, so just copy everything and go to code editor, response, and just paste that here. Okay, we need to, so this is the, we need to paste the raw version, so copy it and paste it. There we go. So we got all these. So you can just leave this like so, or you can provide the response file. So if you have to provide response file, what you need to do is you need to create a file. Let's do that as well. So instead of response, we do response file, and we get rid of everything over here, response file, and as is specified in documentation, you should store that inside storage responses. So let's go to storage and let's create new folder called responses. So you can call anything. So here we'll create new file, or you can group them by folder as well. So for now we'll tasks get.json, and we'll paste our example response, or what we copied here, into there. Alright, so here in your response file in your task controller, what we can do here is specify the path to that. So responses and task.get.json. There we go. So we can see exactly that response here. Similarly, for any 401 response, we'll create another file, response file, and then we need to provide like 401 unauthenticated. So we'll say 401.json. Let's create that file. So inside responses, new file, 401.json. So in case of 401, our application will return something like this. Let's paste that and let's regenerate. We already specified that 401 response here as well. So let's refresh it. Listing. So here we say requires authentication, route name, and this is example response for 200 response. And if you go down here, you can see for 401 as well. Similarly, you can provide for 404 or any other status. All right, quite easy. Similarly, you can provide these for our store view as well, like so. Over here, you can just copy and paste it. So make sure you got just these kind of syntax, star and then one space and response file. So for 401 it will be same, and task get task store.json, and we need to create that file inside storage response task get. We have these, and we can create another one, task store.json. There we go. So in store view, so to know the response structure for store, we can post it in Postman like so, and then raw view, just copy it into our tasks.store.json file, just paste it, and yeah, generate it. If we refresh, we should see for task listing 200 and 401. For newly created tasks, this 200 response which we just specified, and 401 response as well. So from this, next we will create for show as well. So display specified task, and this requires authenticated. Similarly, for task show view, let's go to Postman for displaying any task. So let's say we want to see the task with ID 5. There we go. So we get this kind of response. So here we need to specify what is this URL parameter. Okay, so in our store we just provided this body parameter. Here we need to provide the URL param, which is the task. Which is required. So this is integer required, ID of the task. Alright, so URL parameter is done. Similarly, we need these request and response file for them as well. Task show.json, or you can do any combination as well. For one you can specify file, and for show, yeah, copy it and paste it. So once you made any all changes that you require, run generate, as you know, as we have been doing for a while, the generate command. So once that is done, let's go to display the specified task. So URL parameter, we need to provide the task, this one, which is the optional, where we, yeah, so required should be first before the integer. Yeah, it don't need to be integer or anything. So task required, ID of task. There we go. Alright, so this is about documenting API. I hope I covered everything. So for update as well, similar thing, if you know how to do for store, so yeah, same thing for update as well, same thing for destroy as well. So you don't need to provide any put patch, it automatically detects. You just need to specify the body parameter or any other URL parameter or query parameter, and then you need to provide all the response body, what kind of response it will return. Alright, so another thing, if you don't want to generate all the documentation, default documentation for these endpoints, like these password related route, and if you want to just generate documentation for tasks, what you need to do is, if you go to config API doc, here in your route section, here is match, you can provide domain name or any prefix. So star means everything. So what we can do is API tasks, if you do like so, API tasks and everything that matches after API tasks. Or if you want to just create documentation for API endpoint only, so after API you need to provide the star, which specifies everything that matches after API, and after that just run that generate command. Now if you refresh the documentation, you should see for task, then in general you have just register login endpoint only. So if you don't want these endpoint, even these password reset login register, what you can do is tasks. Alright, so after you generate, so you can only see for tasks. So if you notice here, API/task is missing because it will only match after this tasks. So it is skipping this endpoint. So what we need to do is we need to specify that as well, API tasks. So previously it was skipping the index view. Now if you refresh, yeah, so we got everything: list, store, display, update, remove. Okay, so I hope you learned something out of this video, how to document your API. And yeah, I will see you on next video related to API documentation. So bye.